Hey everyone, this is Adam from Figma, and today I'm going to be showing you how to create custom email components using the Emailify Figma plugin. So the first thing we need to do, if you haven't already done so, is just go to the Figma community and search for the word Emailify. So that's Emailify. And if you pop that in and click on the plugins tab, you'll see this result pop up. All you need to do is click on the install button on the right hand side, and once it says installed, we're ready to get started. So what you can do is just open up a brand new Figma file, and to run the plugin, you just right click anywhere, go down to plugins and click on Emailify HTML Builder. And this is going to open up the plugin that we just installed. So the first thing we need to do is just give the email a name. So I'm just going to call it component test just for this tutorial. And I'm going to click on add new Emailify container. And that's just going to add a brand new empty frame to our page. It's a special kind of frame that allows us to add these components from the plugin in, and then we're also going to be able to add our own custom plugins, which I'll show you in a moment. So if you've already seen this tutorial in another video, you'll know that you can basically just click on any of these components. You can go to different categories and immediately create those components. These are totally customizable. These are native Figma components, so you can customize them and then you can reuse them as instances. Which means that you can change anything in there. So if you wanted to change the font size of the body, you could do that and it would update across all of your instances. So that's how you can do it. But if any of these components that you've got in the pre-built component section aren't what you're looking for, we can actually create a custom one by clicking on the custom tab in the menu up here. So if you click on custom, you'll see it comes up with this little call out saying that we don't have any custom components yet. But what we can do is click on this create new component button. So I'm going to do that now. And that's going to bring up the custom component builder. So this is a brand new feature in the Emailify plugin. And what it allows us to do is customize our custom components using this interface. So what I can do is essentially grab any of these elements. So if I wanted to grab a title tag element, I can drop that in there. I can drop in some body copy. I can add a button. And you can see up here we've got some layout options. So at the moment it's just defaulting to a single column, but if I wanted to make that into a double column, I can just click on double column and that will add a brand new column here. So I can do things like add an image to that second column, and you'll get a sense of what this looks like if I just create this component now. So I'm just going to call this one split image component, and I'm going to click create and insert new component. And you can see there it's just created a brand new component under the custom components category, and it's also automatically added it into our Figma design. So this is completely customizable as the other ones were. It's a native Figma component, so you can modify that content. You can go ahead and still change things around in here. You can add images and update padding, all that sort of stuff. So we can update that and that will be reflected in there. And again, you can duplicate that and create an instance, and that will allow you to easily keep those changes in sync across your design or in other emails as well. So there's a few other things we can do here. We can edit the component, so we can click on this little settings button, and that's just going to bring up the component that we just added. So what I can do is I can move that around a little bit, add new things to it. So I could add some social icons down here. And then if I go ahead and update that by clicking on update saved component, you can see here that it's updated the component. It's worth noting that that will not impact anything you've already added to the page. It's just going to update the saved custom component for you to add in the future again. So if you click on that image or that little icon, you'll see that it's added our brand new updated component. The alternative way of doing this, if you don't want to override the original component, but you want to use it as a base for a new component, is you can click on that settings button again. And in this case, I'm going to do a triple layout just to show you a bit of a different example. So in this one, we'll do a triple layout. I'm going to move this over there, and I'm going to do it kind of like a right aligned one, and basically just flip a few things around. So in this case, I'm just going to add another bit of content in the middle and to the left, and I'm just going to make that centered and that right aligned. So you can change the alignment of each column down here as well, and the vertical alignment of the row up here you can change. And in this case, instead of clicking on Update Saved Component, what I'm going to do is instead create a new name. So I'm going to call this triple component. And I'm going to click on Create and Insert New Component instead of Update Saved Component. So if I click on that, you'll see here that it's created a brand new component. So it hasn't updated our original one, it's left that intact. But we were able to use that as a base to create a brand new forked component, I guess. So that's added it to the page down here as a brand new component, and it's left the other ones untouched. Again, you can go in there and edit that one too. So for example, if I wanted to make that, let's say, bottom aligned as far as the row goes, I can do that. And if I click on Update that component, Update Saved Component, you can see here it's updated the saved component. It hasn't modified the one we've already added, but I can now add that as a brand new component by clicking on it, and now it's bottom aligned. And of course you can update these things inside the component itself. So if you wanted to do a different alignment, you can change it in here just by clicking on the column. So you can see we've got the columns here, and so I can change that in my Figma settings and update that manually too. So that's all possible in there. So yeah, these are totally customizable. It's just to serve as a bit of a base for brand new content components. So you can do, if we add another one, I'll just show you a few different alternatives. So we can do things like add a hero component. So this allows you to have a real background image with rich text content or rich text elements over the top of it. So if we click on that one, for example, and then we add a title and a body and maybe a button, just to keep it simple. I'm going to center align that. I'm going to call it Custom Hero, and I'm going to click on Create and Insert New Component. And you can see here it's created a special hero component, so you can see the little hero emoji. And what that means is it's effectively going to let you add a real background image. So if we open up that fill, you can see here that is an image fill. So you could drag a brand new image onto that fill, and that would allow you to have a different background image essentially. And of course you can customize this text and the colors and spacing and fonts and everything that you need to in there. And we can actually see what this looks like just by opening up the preview feature of the plugin. So I'm just going to move this up to the top just to give a bit more of a preview. So what we can do is click on the preview button in the Emailify header. So if I click on preview, that's going to generate a real HTML preview in real time in the Figma plugin. So this is just before we export the HTML. You can get a sense of what it's actually going to look like. So I can update that sizing to desktop sizing, and you can see what that's going to kind of look like. So you can see there it's basically matching up as you'd expect, but this is the real HTML that's going to get exported. These are real buttons, real icons, and you can customize these on the page and then refresh the design by clicking the refresh icon, or you can go ahead and also add mobile updates. So if you click on the little settings icon after clicking on any layer, you get a whole bunch of different options. So if I wanted to optimize this for iPhone 12 and I noticed that something needed to be adjusted, I can open up the settings. I can click on either a row, I can click on a column, I can click on a text layer, and that allows me to do things like override the font size on a mobile device, update the line height, override the letter spacing, update the alignment. I can do all these things. I can hide it just on mobile or desktop. So yeah, you can basically click on any of these elements, and depending on what the element type is, it'll automatically bring up these options for you. So you can add things like the link. So this Facebook icon, you'd want to paste in your Facebook URL there, and that would automatically include it in the HTML export. So those are just normal features. They apply to the regular content components as well. So you can click on those and you get the same options. But yeah, you'll also get them with your custom components that you've added into. So that's what that looks like there, just in the live HTML preview. And the other thing you can do is there's another special type of component we could create. There's two ways of doing this, but you can basically add custom HTML or custom code into your components as well. So I'll show you the first version of that just up front. So the first way we can do that, for example, is if we open up, let's say, our existing component and we want to add some code into that component. what we can do is we can drag this code element, drop it into here, and I'm just going to click on Update Save Component. And if I click on that component to load it in, what you'll notice here is you've got a new special text field with a little programmer emoji. And this is actually going to allow us to create custom HTML. So what I can do is I can either paste or type custom HTML. And for example, I'm just going to add the most basic example of this just to show you how it works. So I've just put in a really basic table. I'm going to click on preview. And what this is going to do is it's going to render that HTML for me in here. So that is custom HTML being rendered from the text layer. So that's pretty cool. It means you can completely customize the HTML that gets injected into any content block or any column. Of course, this is a very lame example. It's just a hello, but you could add effectively anything you wanted onto there. And what you can also do if you click on the email frame itself, and if you click on that top level frame and click on the settings icon, what you can do is you can actually inject CSS rules in here as well. So I'll just make that a little bit bigger so we can see what that looks like. So let's say I wanted to add some CSS to any element that has a class name of blue. So let's say I've got blue, and I wanted that to be have a color of blue. So I can do that quite easily. And this is just a very, very basic example. I also might want the font size to be, a bit bigger, and I might want to also set the font family. So I could set that to Arial and have a fallback of sans serif. So this is just a very, very basic example. But what this is going to do is it's going to inject these CSS rules onto any element, inline element, that you've added in an HTML tag. So I'm going to grab that class. I'm going to get the blue class, and down here I'm just going to clean up these other components for a second so we can clearly see what's going on. And I'm just going to jump into my code block again, and this time I'm going to add a class name to my TD tag, and it's going to be a class of blue, and I'm just going to refresh that, and you can see there it's actually injected that class onto the element. So it's rendered the class name, and it's injected the styles that we added in our settings panel on here. So that's pretty neat. What we can also do is inject mobile CSS rules as well. So this might seem counterintuitive, but if you wanted to do the blue class and actually override that to be red on mobile, you can do that. So these mobile rules will only be applied on mobile. You just have to remember to add the important flag to mobile because it needs to be overridden. So now I've added that. I'm just going to refresh, and you can see it's now red, but it's only going to be red on mobile. On desktop, it's still blue. So you can add different rules for your CSS elements, CSS classes rather, using that settings panel. You can also just directly inline those styles onto the element too. So if you wanted to just jump in here and do some inline styles, you can totally do that as well. So you could put those styles on there, and that would also work. So you could do something like letter spacing, and you could set that to 10 pixels or something like that. And if you refresh that, you'll see the letter spacing pop up. So you can actually include those styles directly on that component. So that's quite handy. You can also do things like if you're using like a MailChimp or a campaign monitor or a email service provider, what you can do is you can add merge tags. So you could do custom text or custom messaging, which means you could do things like placeholder tags. So I can't remember the exact syntax, but it's something like, fname or something like that in MailChimp. It looks something like that. And what that will do when you send the email is it will swap out that fname with any placeholder. Having said that, you could also use that on your normal text layers. You could do something like that, and MailChimp will also swap out that for the real first name in your list. But the other thing you can do is templating tags. So if you're using a templating language in your email system, you could do things like if statements. So if something equals to something, that would also let you do something, render some different content in there, depending on those conditions. So you could. This is totally fake. This is totally fake syntax, but this is just an example of what you could do. And the other neat thing at a much larger scale that you can do with this code feature, which I'll show you now, is let's say you've got a few different components. So let's say we've got a hero, and let's say we've got 2 different heroes and maybe some extra content. What I can do is I can actually have 2 different heroes. So I could have first hero, which is the primary one, and then I would override maybe the second one, the instance. But what I can actually do is create custom code wrappers as well. So if I jump back into my create new component builder, and this time I'm going to select a brand new layout that we haven't seen yet. So that's the custom HTML block. So this is different from the HTML element. The HTML element will allow you to add code inside of a column, a content column. The one we're going to add now is actually adding a content code block in between rows. So this will allow you to do things like wrap rows with code, or actually write complete blocks of code that kind of sit in between rows that aren't contained within the structure of the content. So I'll show you what I mean by that. Again, I'm just going to do some fake syntax, but it'd be something like, if let's say points, let's say you have a points system or something for your e-commerce store, points equals is greater than 30. So let's say that's a tag. So I'm going to do points open. So I'll do points open. It's created that as a custom component, and you can see down here it's added it as a custom HTML component. What I can do is I can wrap that here. So I can do if points equals to 30. I can add a new one. So I can do, let's say, an end statement. So I'll do end if or something like that. End points. So I'm going to put that at the bottom. And then maybe I'd also, my syntax language also has like an else. So I might do else here. And I could drop that in between those two. And what that would do is it would render these little things of code as raw text or raw code. So if we open up our preview, you can see here that we've got raw text. So we've got if points is greater than 30, load this one, else load that one, and then end the conditional down here. So again, this is totally fake conditionals, but your email service provider would have conditional logic that you can paste in as HTML, and you could create these kind of dynamic blocks using that method. And finally, the other thing you could do, as I mentioned a minute ago, is you could have something like this inside of the rows, in between the rows. So if we do a brand new component and we'll say custom table block or something like that, paste that in there. You can see the code getting highlighted in there as well. So you could basically paste an entire table layout, and that would get injected in between any of these rows. You would have to probably also add a wrapper just to constrain the width of that table, because by default it'll basically just be sitting full width. So you could add some widths and stuff like that. But if you really wanted to add a full block of HTML anywhere in your email, you could totally do that. So that's kind of the different options you've got with the custom code block as well. And of course these are reusable, so I could just click on else, end if, and easily get those code blocks added back in as reusable pieces of code. So that's really easy if you need to create a bit of a library of templating language blocks. You can certainly do that and have them saved in here, and you can edit them as well, just like the other ones too. Okay, so that's basically a rundown of this brand new feature, the custom components feature, which allows you to create custom email components in Figma, which will then be rendered out in HTML email format. And of course, when you do want to export this to a real HTML email, all you have to do is click on the export button. You can change this just to HTML if you don't need MJML. That's a different kind of templating language. And you can put in your subject line. You can put in some pre-header text, custom pre-header. And all you have to do is click on export to code. We've already previewed it, so we don't need to do that again. So I'm just going to click on export to code. And this is going to export my email design from Figma to production ready HTML. So all I need to do is click on download your zip file. I'm going to save that to my desktop, unzip the zip file. And in my folder, you can see here, we've got a preview, and inside the component test folder, which is the name of our email, we've got our images and we've got our HTML. So I can basically just open up the preview page first, and that's going to give us a preview of both sides at the same time. That's just a really nice way of getting an overview. We've got our terrible looking code, custom code, styled code down here. But yeah, you can see everything's been rendered out as you'd expect. So we've got the HTML, all of our buttons, everything like that. And the mobile view is looking pretty good as well. Okay, so I think that's basically all you need to know to get started with this. Feel free to run wild with this component builder. I showed you a really basic example, but you can basically go as much as you want with it. You can add as much or as little to each of these code blocks as you want. You could create a huge, massive, long single column or double columns, or you could just create multiple columns that you use kind of in between other predefined columns or components. And yeah, so I think this is going to be a really nice feature to build out custom component libraries that you can use ongoing. So if you design up these components, you can kind of store them in your component library, and they'll also appear as assets over here. So you can actually drag those from the assets panel directly into your emails as well. So that's just another way of accessing those if you're using them in new Figma files. Okay, so I hope that's been helpful. This was a big feature request from a lot of you, and we're more than happy to ship it because I think it's going to be really useful. So I hope you enjoyed the tutorial, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what you build and design with this new feature. So until next time, thank you as always for watching, and we'll be back soon with more tutorials just like this one.